Being a stereotypical sports-loving male, I'm not always crazy about talking about things that make me feel upset. But how did that happen exactly? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you haven't already, please continue to like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this show. Big shout out to all of you who have done so already and continue to support the show, which today is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks is a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com. Use promo code Locked On at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. There's a running joke on Twitter where someone will preface a tweet with men would rather do blank than go to therapy. Fact check, often true. Well, I suppose in some sense it'll be therapeutic to just get all this out. And yesterday I was talking big picture, but today we're going to go through it. The grueling details and things that slipped through the cracks and how it just went so unbelievably wrong after it went so very right. And I want to reiterate again because I think it's really important. These two games that Oregon lost in the last three, not like last year. Not like last year at all. Team wasn't ready. Game plan wasn't ready. Got completely outcoached from the start. Oregon got outcoached in 2 fourth quarters here. That's different. Very, very different. You couldn't have looked at either of those Utah games and said, oh, they should have won. Nope. You keep playing those games, Utah's going to win 10 times out of 10. You play these games against Oregon State and Washington over and over again, Oregon's going to win 5 times out of 10 and lose 5 times out of 10. Because you're playing a good team in a close one-possession game in a rivalry, you're going to win like 50% of the time or so. You'd like to win more, but that's just the reality when you have a good team on the other side of the field. And that leads into my first point on all this. It's not as if Oregon wasn't ready for Oregon State. It's not as if they didn't have a game plan going in capable of getting them a victory. You know how I know that? They were up 21 points, and the game felt like it was over, that it was done. And then the defense, again, collapsed. I'll get to that. But everything that had to go wrong for Oregon went wrong. Oregon State deserves some credit, but Oregon lost that game far more than Oregon State won it. How else do you explain a punter dropping the ball on the 2-yard? I mean, literally handing them a touchdown. Handing it to them. Just gift wrap. Here you go. Special teams. All of a sudden. What just happened? We're inside the 10. They're on our 35. Time and time again. Bad. But the number one culprit here, just like the Washington game, it was the defense. It was not good enough for 4 quarters. It was good enough for 3, wasn't good enough for 4. Same thing in the Washington game. It wasn't great for 3 quarters against the Huskies. It was pretty darn great for 3 quarters against the Beavs, but it wasn't great for 4. And part of that's on the players, part of that's on coaching. But the number one factor, 3 things in order that lost Oregon this game. Number 1, the defense. It is inexplicable to understand that Oregon not only blew a 21-point lead and a 17-point fourth quarter lead, but did it with Oregon State completing 6 passes in the game. Embarrassing. Every player on that defense should be embarrassed about what happened. You didn't just give up a bunch of points. You did it in a way that goes against everything we know about football, and what every football coach would tell you, which is when you are down, you've got to throw the football. You can't run it at a rate that allows you to move the ball up and down the field quickly. And yet Oregon State did. I'm not kidding you, everybody. I've never seen that before. I've seen 21-point comebacks. I've seen 25-point comebacks. We all think of the 28-3 Super Bowl with the Falcons and the Patriots, right? You know what the Patriots did a lot of in that game? They threw the football. They weren't out there handing it off for 15 yards a carry or whatever it was in the second half. Felt like it was 25 yards a carry. And really what it came down to defensively was, think about it like this. If you've got a big test to study for, whether it's in college, high school, or if there are any middle schoolers out there, graduate school, whatever, if you've got a big test and you know because your teacher or professor has told you going into that test that there's going to be a certain type of problem on it, and you've been working on it all week, and you've been preparing for it, and you've gone over it in lessons, you've gone to office hours, you've gotten extra help, you've been studying over and over, there's this one type of problem. And you know it's going to be on there. You know it's going to be the toughest part of it. And it comes about 75 to 80% of the way through the test. You get through, you get your feet wet, start to get in the groove mentally, and then you get to that big problem. And you go through it and you grind and you grind and you grind. And you know it's tough and you're trying to work stuff out and you're trying to remember details and you get through it. Mentally, you take a break a little bit. You think, oh my gosh, I've been working all week for that, and there it was. But what you forget is you still have another 20% of the test left. And then you look back and go, oh my gosh, I did well on the toughest part of it. I did well on most of it. But then I let up because we were building to that one moment. That's the Oregon defense here. Everything was great. They contained the run enough, and Ben Gulbranson was completely limited. You made him totally one-dimensional. That's what you want to do. Don't let him have balance. Force them to just be able to do one thing. And then you got to that point defensively because you made a bunch of big-time plays. And you built a big lead because the offense started moving the football. And it looked like the Oregon defense just thought, all right, well, we got through the tough part. Nothing else to do, right? But there was. And then everything started to steamroll. And it got tougher for the defense because the special teams and the offense was putting them in terrible situations. Time and time again, the offense couldn't sustain drives when it needed to. But I blame the offense third in this game. And it's a pretty distant third. Do you need to be able to score on first and goal from the 5? Yeah, you do. You know what else you need to be able to do? Not give the ball to your offense inside your own 5 because you didn't fair catch kickoff. You're going to let it go through the end zone instead. Not drop a ball at the 2-yard line and give Oregon State the easiest 7 points that you could possibly conceive. Not do any of those things. Not put the defense out on the field after an ordinary kickoff on our side of the 50. Those are the things you can't do. Should the offense have been able to punch it in? Yeah. Who's got faith the defense had a stopping them? I don't. Why? I don't mind going for it at your own 29-yard line. What about the defense or the punting unit, as Dan Lanning alluded to in the postgame presser, led you to believe, well, yeah, they've got a play in them right now? No, they didn't. They had no answer for the same 3 plays. Stretch zone, split zone, left and right, 4 plays, whatever you want to call it. They had absolutely no answer. It's like when you go gift shopping and you just don't have an idea of what you're searching for. Now you do, because the holidays are here, and achieve gifting greatness is something you can do when you give the gift of perfectly aged, tender, and delicious Omaha steaks. The steak experts at Omaha Steaks have put together special curated gift packages to help take the guesswork out of gifting and make you a holiday hero. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get $30 off your order. Butcher's Cut Filet Mignon, air-chilled boneless chicken, ultra-juicy burgers, even easy-to-prepare comfort meals that are ready in a flash. Omaha Steaks is a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com. Use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. Minimum order may be required. Today's episode also brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. And these days, with every new potential hire feeling like a high-stakes wager, you want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates available. Go create a free job post on LinkedIn. Add the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. Spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with the right skills for your job. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's transition into our first question of the day that comes from my guy Evan Tucker, who I caught up with in Eugene. Here's a question for the next episode. Do you put the loss more on the coaching or the defense? It's an interesting question because the answer is the coaching of the defense. But if I had to pick one, I'm going with the coaching. Here's why. Did the players need to have a meeting where they got together and had one of those scenes you saw on the sideline where they're firing each other up? Maybe they did, but if they did, it clearly did not work. Yeah, they needed to do that and be able to just go out there, make a play, make a stop, have some pride, and it just looked like, I'm not saying they weren't playing hard, but something had changed dramatically. They had no juice. Oregon State was mauling them up front at every level. Ginormous holes to run through for a big, physical, talented downhill runner in Damian Martinez. So that's the first part of it. But this is more on the coaching. Because at some point, when Oregon State made it very, very clear, yeah, we're not going to throw the football. We don't need to. We don't feel like we can. Ben Gulbranson has thrown 2 picks. The other completed pass went for a fumble. We're just going to come out here and run the football. At some point in time, you have to look at Oregon State's weapons and say, it's kind of Trayshawn Harrison, who's more of a number 2, and he's, solid but not amazing, and a bunch of guys who are like, decent but nothing terrifying. How at some point in time did you not put 8 guys in the box? I'm seriously. Oregon State was coming out 11, 12 personnel. How are you not putting 8 guys in the box at one point in time? Could they have done that? But they were just sticking with those 6 or kind of 6.5 to 7-man boxes. Like, put everybody up there at some point. Dare them to throw it. Gulbranson's confidence was shattered. It didn't exist. Like the limit in the calculus problem in Mean Girls. The limit does not exist. The confidence did not exist. Take your corners, put them on an island. Gonzo in mock drafts is going in the high second or first round. You have got to. It was infuriating to watch them try the same thing over and over. It wasn't soft zone against Washington's pass defense, but it was basically the same thing, just with running the ball. They're going to do the same thing, and we're just not going to adjust over and over and over again. And whether that is a blind belief in the personnel that you have of, no, they're going to come up and make a stop. You can think that for a couple plays, but after a while, you needed to just load the box and blitz everybody. I don't care if they complete a pass. Dare them to do it 5 times in a row. But that's what was so demoralizing and embarrassing to watch for that defense that's been so good against the run all season long, that it just looked like there were no adjustments. Oregon State was running the same play. They were running the same looks. Outside stretch and split zone. That's all they did. It's all they did. They collapsed the defensive line over and over again, and there was no adjustment. The quarterback was not a threat to run, and there was no adjustment. It wasn't complicated. It was the most basic play calling you could have had. And yet it was wildly effective enough to come back from 21 points down in just over a quarter. That was, you could make a case for either game, Washington, Oregon State, which was a worse performance from the defensive coaches. You could come down on either side. I'm not going to push back because in their own right, they were both terrible. Absolutely terrible. Every time we sat 8 to 10 yards off against Washington, they had an easy pitch and catch for 7 to 10 yards. And every time we failed to load the box further against Oregon State, they had an easy 7 to 10 yards. Time and time again. So it's on the defensive players at some point because you can't get moved around like that. Not consistently. Every now and then, yeah, it happens against a good team. Can't happen consistently. But that is far more on the coaching. And that's the number one culprit. Number two, special teams. What was going on? It was just bizarre. Like, it was just bad. And it again felt like they started to coast a little bit. Like, oh, we're just going to go do that. We're just going to, you know. I'm like, I tweeted out right when we went up 3 scores. Don't let up. Don't let them back into it. Don't let it be like last year. And it was worse than last year. Because last year we'd blow leads and then hold on to them at the end. And we're like, wow, we should have won by a lot. This year we weren't doing that. But then when we got into these close games, didn't emerge victorious. And I think part of that is Lanning's a first-time head coach. And he's got a lot of growing to do. But part of that as well is just, for whatever reason, on the defensive side, didn't make adjustments. Really, really frustrating. Really, really frustrating. Offensively, again, I blame the offense number 3 behind the other 2. Because you're not going to score as often if you're starting from your own 7-yard line. I think the numbers back me up on that front. And then dropping the punt right there, just stuff happens. That's just like bad luck. And again, important to remember here. The only way Oregon lost this game is if so many things went wrong. So many. Like, if you were live betting on all of those things to happen at the time that they began to transpire, it would have been like plus 900 or some ridiculous figure like that. It was so unlikely that everything went like that. That Oregon had a bad snap, a bad snap against Washington, our quarterback gets injured on the next play. Like, it's just part of that, honestly, got a little unlucky. Got really, really unlucky. Punters drop punts all the time. What if it had happened against Colorado? Well, it happened to take place against Oregon State. Well, you can't always control that sort of stuff. They're kids, they're humans, they make mistakes and such. Offensively, they were still driving down to take the lead. And I want to go back to this coaching element, because that loss almost entirely on the coaching staff. I did not want to go for it on 4th and 3. Camden Lewis has been awesome. He's been automatic. Hope he comes back next year. I think he will. I don't think he's got the leg strength to go to the league just yet. We saw that against Washington rather. So I think he should be back. That's great because he's awesome. You had 3 points there. And what if, though you failed on the first 3 tries, unfortunately, when you were first and goal at the 5, which you just haven't seen all year, and the offensive line just didn't execute straight up, and the play calling, again, questionable down there. First time full-time play caller. Stuff happens like that. But what if you'd gone down there, first and goal at the 5, trailing not by 4, but by 1, and you don't get on first down, and you don't get it on second down. And you aren't thinking 4-down territory. So you don't run it on third down, so you throw it on third down. Maybe it doesn't work then either. Okay. Well, now you can kick a field goal, take a lead. Did I think that the defense had to stop at him? No, probably not. But you would then at least force Oregon State to go on a drive to win the game. Maybe they move it all the way down the field. You force them to kick a field goal down by 2. Their kicking game hasn't been that reliable this year. I am a fan of being aggressive when it not obviously when it works, but I recognize you're not going to get it every time. But there are instances, and I've been consistent on this all season long. This is going to continue to be my opinion. When you are on the road and you go down the field, different if you force a turnover, have a big punt return, right? So the offense didn't really have to do very much to get in that position. But when you march down the field against a good defense like Oregon State's, and you're on the road, or Cal's, and you're on the road, take the points when your kicking game is good. Different if your kicking game is questionable, if it's suspect. But guess what? Camden Lewis is not. I've got full faith and confidence in him. Just like the government issuing a loan. Full faith and credit of the U.S. government. That's my endorsement for Camden Lewis. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, and I approve this message. All right, I'm done. So, not with the episode, but just for that little tidbit. I really think when you're on the road, again, different at home, but I still like taking points at home sometimes. When you go all the way down the field against a good defense, take points. You got to take points. Did it against Utah, and look how that worked out. 1-3. Interesting. Okay, so that's how that went. One of you asked a question. I'm sorry, I forgot to write down again. I really try to write your name down, but I think you know who you are anyway. About whether or not there should be a rule about coaches having to stay, with all the turnover and such. Yeah, that's very unrealistic. The NCAA is a private entity, so maybe they'd be exempt from those sorts of laws. I mean, writing a non-compete into a coaching contract, that's just never going to happen, right? Agents write this stuff, and that's not going to take place. And I wouldn't want that anyway, because Oregon, has had a lot of coaches leave, but we poached Dan Lanning from Georgia, and we all love Dan. But if there'd been a requirement that you have to be a full-time coordinator for 3 years or something, as someone threw out there, then Dan Lanning wouldn't be our coach, because he might have been there for 3 seasons. But you get the point I'm trying to make here. It's not realistic. I don't think it's practical, and I don't think it's what Oregon needs. I don't. Like, coaching turnover, it's part of it. If you have the right head coach, then you're going to be able to continue to make quality hires, and Lanning will be tested with that here this offseason. My guy Nick P on YouTube wants a vibe check on offensive recruits without Kenny Dillingham. Tomorrow's show, going to be talking to John Garcia, recruiting director at Sports Illustrated. Make sure you tune into that. We're going to be talking a lot about that. He is super, super connected, and he's going to have a lot of great information. I don't even know what it is at this point in time, but you won't want to miss that. So I'll save kind of my thoughts there for tomorrow a bit, because I'll be talking with someone who knows that sort of situation very well. We'll end with this. Where does this loss rank in Ducks football history? Oh, boy. Grant, that's a good question. And by the way, if you ever want a question answer here on the show, especially as we move into the offseason once the bowl game gets played, hashtag AskLODPod on Twitter, or you can just DM me at Smalls_55 or at LockedOnDucks. Also hop in the YouTube comments, add a question on there. I check those every day. Where does this loss rank in Ducks football history? It's worse than the Alamo Bowl. The Alamo Bowl was a larger lead, but it is against a good team in TCU, and it was an embarrassing look. And by the way, for those of you who think bowls don't matter as much, if you don't think that game contributed to Mark Helfrich getting fired after going 4-8, I think you were mistaken. But in that game, you lost your starting center and you lost your starting quarterback. And in this game, you lost neither of those things. And in this game, you lost to your rival. And yes, I would rather beat Oregon State than win the Alamo Bowl. I'd prefer to win both. But with what was on the line, a chance to play in the conference championship game, get to the Rose Bowl, hoist another conference trophy, to give that away in the fashion that they did, I mean, when was the last time Oregon had that high stakes of a loss? Stanford 2012, D'Anthony not throwing a block on Mariota's run, or else they probably win that game. Only putting up 14 points at home against the Cardinal back when Stanford was really good. They're looking for a new head coach now with David Shaw out of there. I think that one's got to be up there because you win that game, you're probably in the national championship game. Same thing, 2011, the Maldonado missed kick. If you had Camden Lewis for that kick, I think he drills it. This Camden Lewis, of course, not the true freshman one, but that's the guy he is right now. So I think those two got to be up there. I would put this above terms of like being a worse loss than the national championship games in terms of how it feels afterward. Well, actually, no. Okay, no. So the two national championship losses are up there. Though Ohio State wasn't as heartbreaking because after the game I just looked at it and went, they're just a better team. They're the better team. Tip of the cap. Had a better game plan, executed better, better team. All right, tip of the cap. Auburn, though, Dyer was down. We all know Dyer was down because your ankle's not your foot. And so those two are up there. The two losses that deprive them of getting to a national championship game. I think this is worse than the Washington loss in 2016 with the Jake Browning point. Not just because we got major redemption 2 years later, but also because the stakes there just were not as high. Like a conference championship game was not in the cards for the Oregon team that year because they went 4-8. So I'm trying to think back through the rest of them, make sure I don't miss any. Yeah, so it's definitely top 10. Definitely top 10, in my lifetime. But the two losses that didn't get you to a national, it's probably number 5. Probably number 5. If you think of another one, drop in the YouTube comments or shoot me a message. But the two national championship games, that's worse. And then the two games that stopped you from getting to a national championship game, also worse. There was a Stanford game in 2013 that kept Oregon out of the championship picture, but then Mariota was hurt, so like that wasn't quite as crushing or embarrassing. They were down 26-0, but they came back. But again, Mariota was like really hurt in that game, so I think this one was worse, especially because it was to Oregon State. Trying to just run through. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I think it's probably number 5, at least for me in my lifetime. I'm sure there were some other ones. Arizona State 2019, that's up there. I think the Washington loss might have been where. No, this was more embarrassing than the Washington loss because Washington's a better team and you were at home, and that makes it a little worse in some sense, but it wasn't a 21-point collapse. So, yeah, I think ASU 2019 is up there because that kept Oregon out of the college football playoff. So I think you probably put that one above this one. In hindsight, knowing what we know now, since they took care of Utah, like 12-1 Oregon, yeah, they're going to the college football playoff that year. So ASU 2019, USC 2011, Stanford 2012, and then the two national championship games. Those are the only ones I can think of that are worse. If you got another one, let me know. But still optimistic about where the program's at. I still love Dan Lanning. I still love all of you and appreciate you listening to or watching the show whenever or wherever that may be. Have a wonderful rest of your day and go Ducks.